in the middle, all right? Accountable and correctable is our message title this morning. Accountable and correctable. Now, I would like, our key verse is Psalm 86, verse 11, but we have some stories to march through before we get to that psalm. Think about accountable versus correctable. That's a theme. You know, a lot of people, I think in politics, in business, about 25 years ago in the business world, I can't remember who it was first, but some CEO of a prominent business decided that after some egregious thing happened in that business, that they would issue an apology. That never happened before, pretty much. Some apology was issued by this business CEO who wanted to be accountable. I think that that's a good start. I think we all would like to be accountable. We all have that notion. Or if we don't, we need to grow in that. There's a big bunch of accountability in the book of Proverbs, and I'm not going to get into that this morning. Proverbs it's been said about Proverbs, I think about it as the 3 M's. Proverbs can be titled by 3 themes. The M's are money, your morals, and your mouth. Proverbs is often about your money, morals, and your mouth. And if you've ever had trouble with them, and all of us have, read Proverbs, think about it. That is good for us. But the morals, I guess, is where we're focusing this morning, because accountability, in my notes, it actually says accountability versus being correctable. So that one changed, accountable and correctable. That is where we need to be as students of Christianity. See, someone said one time, why would a doctor have a practice? A practice implies that something's ongoing. A doctor has a practice, kind of like, aren't you done practicing? I want a guy who's done practicing and's got it down. I want to go to a doctor who's good at it, not practicing. Well, anyway. We want our doctors to be accountable and also correctable. Let's get into that a little bit. See, the Bible has lots of examples, good and bad, of individuals who have an encounter with God and are forever changed. I could think of a few. We're going to mention a few. They have an encounter with God and are forever changed. Now, I happen to, I don't like sharing these stories because you know me. I'm so glad many of you did not know me, especially my children, when I was younger. I'm embarrassed by that. And I'm on this very short list of people who had an encounter with God and did nothing. I had encounters with God when I was a young man, and I did nothing. I'm so regretful of that. When are you going to wake up? Talking to me. Every time you point at somebody, there's 3 more pointing back at you, okay? I'm not going to do that this morning. I am getting all the fingers pointed back at me. When are you going to wake up? Because you have an encounter with God. Some people woke up, and they, I think I'm getting talked to here. I'm getting something from God. I'm getting something from somewhere, and I don't know what to do about it. That's a cool spot to be in, by the way. That's a really great spot. If you come to that point of accountability in your life, you might want to do something about it. Well, the Bible has lots of good and some questionable examples of those who have encountered God and were forever changed. I like those stories. I also like the ones who just did nothing or had a bad result because they did nothing. We don't have the entire story of these individuals. The lives of these guys are documented, maybe just the highlights. We don't get to see the moments when Joseph and Daniel blow it or fail. We don't get to see the times when these people, I idolize them. Not in an unhealthy way. I certainly admire and respect them. But I look at the outcome, and the proof is in their fruit. So, like Joseph, for example, in Egypt, being at this huge disadvantage, being sold into slavery and getting spit out into the grinding workings of Egypt, into this house of a man who used him as a slave, as a servant, and then the proof of that faithfulness in his life coming. Well, we don't know. We don't get the low light reel. We just hear about the good stuff. Well, that's why their life in the book that we get to read about, and those stories are so powerful. And those are the parts that we read and know, and those are the ones that we talk about because of the change. Those are the people who showed up and were forever changed. They encountered God and did something about it. Now, just because you have an encounter with God, please don't expect smooth sailing afterward. A lot of people think once I'm saved, I'm either going to have it easy or I'm going to have all the tools I need to navigate the stuff that I don't like when it comes. Well, spoiler, that may not happen. Faithful people then and now waver, struggle, and even fall, but rising and following the Lord each time marks a true believer. So you probably won't get it all right, and we're going to go over some examples. Let's just get right in. I was thinking about Moses. Early in his life, he had the right values. I think the guy was pretty honorable in some ways. He was advocating for his people, these Israelites who were enslaved, and he advocated for them. He tried to appeal for them, and maybe he had, I don't think he had picket signs and was demonstrating on the Pharaoh's court or anything. But he also had a wrong solution of killing this slave driver, this taskmaster. See, he meant well. He had right values. The murder of the Egyptian, though, sent him on a trajectory where the Lord had to wait on him decades before he could put Moses to work for him. See, he jammed it up. He did things on his own. Because of disobedience, while wandering in the desert, food and water were scarce. Okay, we're looking at the life of Moses. Think about him being accountable enough for God to start. Because had he seen this burning bush in the desert and just left and went and got on his smartphone and did nothing about it, you can't use that guy. Now, fast forward some decades later, while wandering the desert, food and water was scarce. Now, this is during the Exodus, but after the flight from Egypt, but this this horde of people, the Lord told Moses to speak to the rock and water would flow. But in frustration, what did he do? He struck it twice. Now, God still caused water to flow from it, but it cost Moses. It costs you. It cost him the opportunity to enter the promised land with the Israelites. He also had to pass that baton of leadership to Joshua, and I think he died on Mount Nebo. He was very close to God, though. See, he messed up. And I'm okay with that. I happen to know this guy. I look at him in the mirror often. It's not done and gone. He was very close to God. So he was accountable, and I think he was teachable, he was correctable, but he didn't have smooth sailing. Next one, Abraham. Before he became the father of God's people, he was Abram of Ur, and the Lord spoke to him, telling him to take his people to head for a land God would show him. That, again, on the surface sounds accountable. But then in just a few chapters after that, in Genesis chapter 12, and then again in 20, so that's 2 times, he lies and says Sarah is his sister to stay safe, to save his skin. I know that guy too. we all have a bone in us about self-preservation. He does this to survive and stay safe in these foreign lands. And twice God intervenes. Is it indicative, is it revelatory of wavering faith? Yeah, I think so. It is to me. He and Sarah hatch a plan. This is so grievous. This is actually still going on, this conflict. He and Sarah hatch a plan to fulfill God's promise because God promised him something. And how many of us take the steering wheel when we want to do something and we go do things our way? And they did. They seemed accountable on the surface, but they hatched a plan to fulfill God's promise by impregnating Sarah's servant Hagar, and that plan does bear fruit, but it doesn't align with what the Lord wanted. See, it happened, but it wasn't right. So how do we do those things? So we're all people of accountability. I'm sure we are on some level. We could go on and on with these examples. We could do Samson. We could do Mary Magdalene. We could do Saul of Tarsus. I just mentioned Joseph. But I want to focus this morning in Psalm 86, and you're welcome to join me there. This is a little different. This is a gear change to me. In the book of Psalms, David cries out over and over. He did not write, there's Psalms in here that weren't his, but I thought, no, this one is a prayer of David. It says clearly in King James, a prayer for deliverance. Boy, that's a good start. Teach me, let's just look at 11. Teach me thy way, O Lord, I will walk in thy truth. Unite my heart to fear thy name. There's part 1 and 2. There's a bunch going on in those little few lines. Let's dig in. That reveals to me a passionate desire to do what God wanted him to do, to live the truth he believed, to be undivided in his devotion. That's great. I think a lot of us have that prayer. Do you know anybody in your life who says things like that, and then they're kind of just like on to the next thing? We bumped into that a little bit in our Sunday school preparation, where a lot of people say things, but then they don't really go past saying them. They have this thought for the moment. It's temporary, and then it's kind of gone. Well, if you're really passionate and have that desire to do what God wants you to do, it's not going to leave you alone. We have to be in the right state of mind for that. We have to commit. Unite my heart to fear your name. Wow. Let's dig into that a little bit. I want to read NLT. In verse 11, chapter 86, Psalms, teach me your ways, O Lord, that I may live according to your truth. Grant me purity of heart so that I may honor you. Not exactly the same, but I think it helps me understand the notion of this a little better. Even the NIV, teach me your way, Lord, that I may rely on your faithfulness. Give me an undivided heart, that I might fear your name. Who in here has a divided heart? I do sometimes. You know why? Because tomorrow is Labor Day. I think that's great. A lot of us celebrate Labor Day by laboring. I think I will too. We're supposed to have it off. What are you thinking about? Even during sermon time, don't raise your hand. You're thinking about prepping your work for tomorrow. You're thinking about what are you doing this afternoon. You have a divided heart. Okay, that's realistic. I understand that. When you're in class and your math teacher's wah, 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 and they're going on, and you might be, boy, I don't know about you, and I have to tell you something. Talk about accountability. This is not fun. Accountable and correctable, A and B. This is not fun for me, but if this is you, I just want you to know you're not alone. During some of the grueling sermons that I have sat through in my life at conferences and such, all I could think about was getting home to my shop and assembling my 454 Chevy Big Block V8. Shame on me, but it helped me through. Oh, I just couldn't take one more thing. But all I could almost fantasize was about getting back in my work clothes and getting on my apron and standing under this big block engine, looking up at the rotating assembly and feeling the nuts and bolts in my hand just to get through the grueling sermon. Please. So if that's you, bless you. I hope you don't. That's not good. But I've been there, so I really have a heart of understanding. That's a divided heart, though. See, if you're there, I think we need to give it all we got. But I do know there's a thing in my experience called a saturation point. And if you get to the saturation point, maybe you need to go to your special place, and it might involve a Chevy Big Block engine, or it might involve kneading your bread, or ladies going to your sewing place, or men going to your secret place, your closet of prayer. I don't know. And maybe your prayer is just, Lord, help me get through. Help me look like I'm paying attention when I'm really elsewhere. Well, I don't want to dwell on a divided heart because that's tough. I know it. But David is crying out here, teach me your ways that I might live according to your truth. Grant me purity of heart. So I'm undivided. My heart's purely focused on you at the right time. I don't know when your saturation point is. You have a meter. You could number it. You could do it in minutes. You could do it in days. You could do it in numbers. I don't know. But your saturation point is real. That's why when you do your devotions or you read your Bible, I think you need to be realistic. You need to be reasonable. You're such, and you know, I always felt so inadequate because the people around me, I went to a very conservative church before this one. Those guys read their Bibles, they knew the Word, and I always felt so inadequate. Oh, I just cannot sit down and read that thing. Okay, so what? But just don't have a divided heart. The Lord needs what you can give Him. Amen? Grant me purity of heart so that I may honor you. That's how that goes. A divided heart really doesn't honor the Lord. So we can sound accountable. We can give apologies. We can demonstrate or resemble someone who's accountable. But then what after? Are you accountable? Are you correctable? That's where the rubber meets the road. David here is implying this correctability. Teach me thy way, O Lord. I will walk in thy truth. Why? Because I'm correctable. If a person just says, oh, I'm accountable, here's why. You caught me. So I'm going to be accountable because I got caught. That sounds really nice on the surface, and a lot of people do that. If they were never caught, they're not going to be accountable. That's different. That's not what we're talking about. That's why the CEO of the company said, I'm an automotive guy. I would liken it, I didn't complete my thought. That's why the CEO would say, we owe you an apology only because we got caught. Since I'm an automotive guy, the recall. You know, there's a thing in the automotive world called a safety recall. So when you get an automotive or an automobile that has a problem, they're dangerous or something fails on them or people could get hurt or killed, they're supposed to recall and repair those defects so people don't get hurt. But if no one catches it and they know it, they're not going to tell you that. It takes deaths. It takes huge failures and some whistleblower or watchdog to come and say, those things are wrong, you got to fix them. If they don't get to that realization, they never volunteer that. No one does that. But we can't do that as a person of faith. We have to have an undivided heart and come before the Lord and say, you need to search me out. I'm starting this, and I want you to do. I'm plowing here with you, Lord, and I'm turning over the dirt because I'm presenting myself to you, and I want you to go through. I like the imagery of plowed dirt because if you look out on a plowed field, you think, oh, isn't it beautiful, the soil? But if you look at that soil, man, there's rocks, and there's cobs, and there's broken stuff, and there's all kinds of debris in the dirt that you didn't even know was there. It's under the surface, and that's where you go with the Lord. Go ahead and plow that soil, Lord, and as this stuff comes up, let's work on it. You get rid of it. Get me back on track. Give me an undivided heart so I can stay focused and get back with you. So David had these, I would liken it to a roller coaster. Oh, I wrote down some stuff. Okay, I wrote down not only that we should be accountable, but do something about it. Okay, so David had lots of chances. He is in his normal life. He was in real battles. I'm so glad we're not called to that. The enemy is constantly, there were earthly enemies tempting David constantly. Opposing enemies like earthly enemies, but also the enemy, Satan. There was also not enemies, but beautiful women. You know Bathsheba and that story. There was the enemy or the temptation of power that would divide his heart. He could assume power. He could wield that in an unhealthy way. There was King Saul, but his prayer is always the same. Keep me straight. Did he have smooth sailing? Nope. He was a train wreck sometimes, right? He would blow it, and he would come right back, and that's a good model for us today to be accountable, but correctable. David was just such a good model at that. So don't beat yourself over the head. I blew it again. I know. And I think the Lord has that on instant button. I know. I know. I know. So don't get beat down about it. We're going to blow it. Keep that heart a prayer in your heart. Keep me straight. He was clearly teachable and correctable, King David. Having that heart of correction is far more important than what? We can go through a few of them here. A big bank account, good grades, fancy things, large estates. Who knows anyone who looks good on the outside but is just plain unusable by the Lord? I know a lot of people who look great on the outside. They might even do things that are admirable in an earthly way, I could go through a few. The guy, there was a man that used to help us. What is a chief complaint from an employer today? I've heard several. You can't get anybody to show up. You hear that, right? You can't get good help. You've heard that over and over. You just can't get good help. Meaning, a lot of times you can't get anybody to show up. So we had a man who helped us years ago on our business, and he did show up, but he wouldn't do anything while he was there. He mimicked a bucket of sand. This was the guy who showed up every day, so you couldn't really use that against him, and he would stay until it was time to go home, but you just couldn't get the work out of his hide. You know that guy? Then there was another guy, the same crew, who would never show up on time, but he would work really hard, but then he'd get sick. Every day, I don't feel right, I gotta go home. So there's an old saying, if you show up late, you gotta leave early to make up for it. A lot of people do that. If you show up late, you could leave early to make up for it. This was this guy. They both shall remain nameless. So this one guy would show up every day and do very little to nothing, and the other guy would never show up. He would actually call me. He wouldn't show up. And so we would have to leave for our job, which was remote. And so this guy, we just have to go because we kept waiting on this guy, and he wouldn't show up. We got to go. So we leave, and he'd call me on the cell. He had a thing called a BlackBerry. I don't think those are around anymore. And he'd say, where are you guys working? And I tell him, and some gal would show up, and he'd jump out of the car, and he'd work real hard, and then he'd get tired of it. And he'd call her, and she'd come back in that Cadillac and get him, and they'd leave. He was just the most miserable employee. But while he was there, he worked really hard. He hit his saturation point, apparently. He was done working. He didn't want to stay. He doesn't know what Christians know. You don't quit when you're tired, you quit when you're done. Okay? There's a lot to that in the Christian faith life. You don't quit when you're tired, you quit when you're done. Amen. There was this man was on the surface kind of accountable, but he was not correctable. This young guy who would show up and late and leave early, and he was accountable, like, well, I'm here, and he even said that, I'm here. Yeah, but you weren't. He was exhausting. I just fought this guy, just knowing he wasn't going to show up. And what do we do with him when he comes? And we try and make plans and provisions, and he'd wreck stuff. And then the other guy who'd show up, but you just know he wasn't going to be helpful, so it just was exhausting. Meanwhile, okay, those guys on some way were accountable, but not correctable. We kept trying to correct them. Look, you really got to show up. And interestingly, the man who would show up on time and do so little, he tried to correct the kid who would show up late. Hey, man, hey, you need to show up on time. He really didn't like that guy wouldn't show up on time. Well, all that, I just have another example. When we're accountable, that needs to go deeper than the surface. Okay, it needs to go deeper than the surface with the Lord. It needs to go deeper than the surface with others, because that jeopardizes relationship. As a person of accountability, that should be in our DNA. There was a story about, I don't know if you ever heard a singing group called the Nyes. They were from around here, actually, in central Indiana. They were popular, I would think, back in the 70s, clear up through the 90s. They were the Nyes. It was a family of singers and instrumentalists, and they sang bluegrass and gospel hymns, I think, songs. And the leader of the band was a trucker as well. I think that's how he made his real money, and I knew these people, kind of. And they were great, and the older gentleman, the leader, said, we got to talking. He was a trucker, and I'm a trucker, and he said, we had a kid, that was his description, come into the band. We needed another player. We were going on tour, and we needed another player, and boy, this guy could really burn it up. He was a mandolin player, and we needed that in our band. I thought, wow, that's so awesome when a good qualified guy shows up to help you out. He goes, we couldn't use him. I thought, well, couldn't he play? He goes, oh, yes, he could. He could play great. Some of you in this room are musicians, and you know the skill and devotion and practice and detail it takes to be a good musician. You can't make this stuff up. You can't just fudge and play along at this. There's no cheating. You see, if you're an accomplished musician, you didn't just fall into that. You build that every day with your fingers or your whatever you're doing. And so this kid, according to Pappy Nye, that's what they called him, was very good. And he could blister the licks on this mandolin. He could play like nobody else. And he said, come sit in the band. And he could play all these licks, but he would not listen. He wouldn't play with others. He wanted to do what he wanted to do. And they kept telling him, we got to work together here. You can't just go out on your own. And okay. And he'd stop. And then he'd kind of get in the groove with him a little bit. And I hope this helps you like it helps me. He was accountable to that for a little bit, but he wasn't correctable. So he would go off on his own again, and he'd wreck the song. And finally they said, please don't come back. He just wasn't usable. And I would liken it to the coach. I don't watch sports, but some do. And it's very appealing to see a very good sports team. I think the playoffs in NBA and NFL and that kind of, when you get to that level, when you get to the playoffs, the games are usually, the extreme skill emerges, the best teams and the best, the Olympics could be on that level, the best in the world, not necessarily, but the best recognized in the world get together to compete. And so you'll see people at the extreme skill level that is not existing elsewhere. And the coaching of the all-star team, there is such a thing. And in the Olympics, they'll take the best of every basketball team and get them together and try and beat the other basketball teams. I understand the coaches have a very hard job because a lot of those players are accountable, but they're not teachable anymore. They want to do what they want to do. They're very good at what they do. And so can you imagine having a team of 5 Michael Jordans or 5 Scottie Pippens or 5 LeBrons? They might not cooperate. They're used to being the superstar. Everybody passes the ball to them when they're running down the court. What if there were 5 of those guys? And they say, you can't hog the ball. Okay, you're right. We'll pass the ball next play. We'll do it right. They're accountable on the surface, but then the next time they're always hogging the ball because they know how to do it. How could the Lord use a person who's like that? I want to do it my way. I'm used to doing this. I'm pretty sure I'm right. It works pretty well. What if David said that? He didn't say that. He said, teach me thy way, O Lord. Not like, I got this. I'll call you when I need you. That is dangerous. You are heading off a cliff if you do that. I'm going to do this until I need you. Please don't do that. We don't serve a spare tire God. Being an automotive guy, I don't even think a lot of spare tires come with cars anymore. You can't even get out the spare tire. In the old days, a car had a spare tire. Isn't that interesting? They expected them to go flat, and you might need one. I want to read 12. Let's do 11 one more time. Teach me thy way, O Lord. I will walk in thy truth. Unite my heart to fear thy name. There's a whole thing going on there. There's A, accountability, and B, correctability. Those are synergistic. They go together so well. I will praise thee, O Lord, my God, with all my heart, and I will glorify thy name forevermore. There's fruit. There's an A and a B. If I do these things, if you teach me and I receive it, number 12, I will praise thee, O Lord, my God, with all my heart, and I will glorify thy name forevermore. That looks to me, that correctable step 2 is the fruit that comes with that. That relationship, it's ongoing. So when we fall down, we get wiped out, and don't think it's not going to happen. It's okay. I know it's kind of hard to know in the New Testament where it says, consider it joy when these things happen. Joy gets a little cloudy when you get into these things and get wiped out. It's an attitude. It's a good attitude. I want to close this morning with Deuteronomy chapter 10, verse 12. I thought this was related. I want to do King James. And now Israel, and our brother Howard said this morning, there used to be a nation of Israel, a people, and then when the Gentiles got grafted in, we're the new Israel. See, there's no more Gentile and Jew. It's the family of God. So let's insert that today. And now Israel, believers. What doth the Lord thy God require of thee, but to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul. Now he stops there, 12 stops there. But I'm going to go on to 13. To keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes, which I have commanded thee this day for thy good. Behold, the heaven and the heaven of heavens is the Lord's thy God, the earth also with all that therein is. Think about that this morning. NLT, what does the Lord your God require of you? Accountability and teachability, correctability. He requires only that you fear the Lord your God and live in a way that pleases him and love him and serve him with all your heart and soul, and you must always obey the Lord's commands and decrees that I am giving you today for your own good. I want to close with this. There was a time in my life when I was in basic training. You've been in trials. Basic training is a trial. If you're in the military, it's tough. You don't get much sleep and everybody's yelling. You feel displaced, nothing's familiar. And so these drill instructors are seemingly overbearing and harsh, and they will scare you and motivate you in strange ways to do things they want you to do. And it looks like it could be kind of tortuous, and you might feel even singled out or attacked if you're emotional, like a lot of us are. But there's something that happened in basic training where you see the care in a drill sergeant or a drill instructor. There was one boy in our outfit, in our platoon, who could not do push-ups very well. He had little bony arms. His arms were real small. And he was in the group with the rest of us. But most of us could do push-ups okay. So this boy's name was Vic. And they, all the time, every time we marched somewhere, they'd single out Vic. And they'd say, you do 20 push-ups. And we thought they were really torturing, being like singling him out, just being real mean to Vic. And one day we realized that they were trying to help Vic pass his test because he couldn't do push-ups. It looked like he was getting singled out. That was just a great teaching moment to me. And so, do you know, as a believer, I hope this makes sense to you. When we got to where we were going, and that drill sergeant, we knew what was coming after a while. Vic, drop and give me 20. We all just dropped with him. We all started doing push-ups with Vic to get him going. And the first guy, we started getting down with him, and we started doing push-ups. And Vic looked at us. There were tears coming out of his eyes. He thought he was being punished and singled out. But we just got down there with him, and we started doing push-ups with him. I don't know where you are this morning, but if you need someone to get down there and do push-ups with you because you feel like you're being singled out or tortured or tried, you might be being prepared because you're going to need to pass something, but you're never going to get it if you're not correctable. If you just don't see past, I'm being punished or tortured or terrorized, somebody probably has a better plan in place. Will you pass? Well, I need to tell you, Vic passed. And when all of us got down and started doing push-ups with Vic, not all of us, because there were some wise guys, they didn't want to do it. And that's fine. You can pick and choose. But a bunch of us felt bad for Vic, and we thought we were going to get in trouble too. But then we thought, it's okay. They'll punish us, and we'll just do more push-ups. But when you're 18, it's okay. It's good. Bring it on. We were all 18, except a couple of old fogies, and they were 20-something. Well, Vic passed. And guess who was so glad to see him pass? And we were standing tall and really happy because that drill sergeant long before that said, you guys got to understand, you got to pass. Okay, there was some mastermind in place, and his name was Drill Sergeant whatever. He was trying to help us as privates get through basic training. I just look at that today. Had we just thought, you're just, you know what, we're going to rebel against you because we don't like your treatment. We don't like what's going on here. We're going to do things our way, and we're going to prove you wrong. What would have happened? Don't do that as a believer. Okay, we don't want to receive every raunchy thing that comes our way. I'm not implying that. But as believers, we got to think, okay, Lord, I'm with you. I don't understand this, but I'm teachable. Would you click in here and make this thing go? And I'm going to do what I have to do. And it would be nice. Our brother said this morning, fellow saints. That's other believers. That's in this room, that's out of this room, good, faithful people. Yoke up with them. Line up with them. Keep them on your speed dial. Keep them in your contacts. Know them. Fellowship with them. Do your push-ups with them. Let's bow our heads. Lord, I thank you for this time to gather in your name this morning, and I pray impartation, blessing. I pray direction, that we all may walk out together stronger and able to serve you and able to be that light, able to be salt and light that you've called us to be. We don't have to be grand and we don't have to be miserable. We just have to follow your voice, Lord. So let us do that this morning.